Afternoon. My name is Richard Palakis, and this is going to be a battle report between myself and a guy named Paul, who's another one of our locals. For this report, I'm going to be using my battle reporting software that I've been working on. For a more specific tech demo, check out some of the other videos in my channel. But just as a quick explanation, so what's happening is I have a bunch of photos of our game in a folder, um, and so it takes these photos in and turns them into this. So the game is going to be Legion of Everblight versus Convergence of Cirrus. Paul is playing Father Lucant. He has 2 ciphers, a corollary, 2 inverters, 4 galvanizers, and a diffuser. And then he has a unit of elimination servitors, 2 units of reflex servitors, a unit of attunement servitors, Elish, and the Optifex directive. All of the servitors end up free in this theme. For my list, I am playing thagrosh 2. So I'm playing thagrosh 2 in Oracles with a Blightbringer, an Angelius, a Seraph, a Naganite Lurker, Typhon, and a Rake. And then I've got a pair of free Forsaken, a free Nis Sorceress, and a Spell Martyr. So this is what our table looked like. I ended up losing the die roll. Paul chooses to go first. So I ended up taking the left side over here. I wasn't worried about this water getting in my way because most of the stuff that I care about for the center is going to have Pathfinder. And I thought by having this forest farther up, since Paul doesn't have a lot of access to Pathfinder, that would be more annoying. Also, this house here seems terrible. So before we get into the actual battle report, I'm going to set up the terrain in this real quick so that I can use the line of sight stuff. So I'm just going to note that this is a forest, this is a forest, and this guy's an obstruction. Okay, so Paul deploys first, and then I deploy, just to go through everything to make sure that you know what's what. The inverters are right here. The ciphers are here. The diffuser is up here. The rest of the lights are the galvanizers. Bases are assorted servitors. It's worth noting that anything without a model on the base is an elimination servitor. Fortunately, the Legion is much more identifiable, so we've got the Rake, the Blightbringer, Angelius, Nis Sorceress. My Thagrosh is the one model that's not painted orange. Typhon. The Naga is in back here somewhere. I think he's hidden under somebody's wings. So yeah, since Paul deployed first, realistically my list wasn't too worried about where he was going to end up. The general idea was I was going to smash the Blightbringer straight forward. The original idea behind my list was that I was going to be giving concealment to the beasts on the approach, but since Paul doesn't really have any relevant shooting, that didn't matter particularly. So going into the next turn, Paul ran all his stuff forward. There's really not much surprising there. He puts up Watcher, which is super relevant all game long. It gave me a lot of problems. But really nothing surprising. He's hiding behind this house here, and that ends up being a really good spot for him to sit. And servitors on the edges of the zones are just going to dig in pretty much the whole game. So on my turn, I also pretty much just advance. Thagrosh puts up Aggravator because it goes up for free on my first turn, but like I said, it's pretty irrelevant because he has very little shooting that does much of anything. And then Dragon's Blood goes on the Blightbringer, who I have to pull off his base because he's enormous. So now we go into top of 2, Paul's second turn. So he advances very cautiously here, and I asked him after the fact, and he purposefully did not feat this turn. I had been expecting him to really blunt my alpha, but we had a discussion about it after the fact, and he noted that if he had feated here, then me charging in would have actually been probably a mistake, and I could have very easily held my distance and not taken much in response, and I might have had to give up like a point on scenario, but I could have definitely contested things really well. But he specifically did not feat because he was willing to take that first hit. He also throws down 3 rough AoEs from Assorted Heavies right around Typhon because that's the only model I have that doesn't have Pathfinder. So that's just a way to slow him down. Fortunately, I have the Seraph right here, so he's going to be able to bump Typhon forward a little bit on my turn. So let's talk about my turn coming up. So if we look at the Blightbringer real quick, because that's going to be the one that's going to be most relevant. I can't see any of his heavies to declare charges on the heavies, but I can definitely see one of the galvanizers here. So Blightbringer threats 8, well, charges 8, threats 10. So clearly going to be well within range of getting a charge into here and then just starting to bash on heavies. Unfortunately, I'm not quite in advance and attack range. So I do have to waste at least 1 Fury charging. But so Blightbringer is going to be able to charge in and get some massive work done. I start with thagrosh though, so he puts up Manifest Destiny, which is so good in such a melee-focused army. So put up Manifest, he feats, and then he essentially stays where he is. Looking back, I feel like I could have been much more aggressive with him, maybe not this turn, but possibly next turn. As it stands, I really do end up needing his help, and unfortunately he was just too far back, but I'm not used to playing such a tanky caster, so that's something I need to get used to. So that's thagrosh. So Seraph activates first. He ends up slipstreaming Typhon forward 2 inches, which puts him at like about, between the rough terrain and everything, about a 7-inch melee threat for just advancing. So he gets slipstreamed and then walks up and just starts chunking lights. With Manifest Destiny, he drops 1 light and leaves the second on only a couple boxes. And I also put up Excessive Healing because I know that this Cypher here is going to just demolish Typhon the following turn. So then the Angelius goes. It is clearly within range of whatever the hell it wants with flight and the 7-inch speed. So it just hops forward. Unfortunately, Watcher triggers here, which knocks out its mind. So that was annoying. So I boost the initial hit roll because with my mind knocked out, I was on 2 dice drop the lowest, and for that armor piercer attack, you really want to hit. So it's 3 dice drop the lowest. I definitely hit the 4 that I need to punch a bunch of damage into an inverter. So Angelius does a good amount of work into one of the inverters, hitting most of its attacks, thanks to Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny 4 on 2 dice drop 1 is not difficult to hit. So once Angelius is out of the way, Blightbringer charges in. Like I said before, he needed to charge because he wasn't quite in advance and attack range. So he charges this light. Does a reasonable amount of damage to the light using its melee attack and its left arc. Then buys the rest into heavies. It kills one of the heavies and leaves the other very low. The Sorceress then advances and sprays down one of the mechanics because I know he's going to have at least something partially damaged and I want to remove as many repairs as I can. The Rake then is going to activate. I think I misplay the Rake here kind of badly. I originally thought that I was going to be able to leap him into such a position that he was engaging both of these servitors, and I could knock them out and just get rid of that annoying contest. But there wasn't such a position, so instead I end up like advancing to here, and then leaping over to here and just killing one servitor and attacking the objective. I think if I had taken more of my initial movement, I could have advanced to like here and then leapt between these two. And that would have let me just get something more done with the Rake. As it is, it kills kills the servitor and then puts like 2 points on the objective. So an irrelevant amount of damage, really. So after that, the Forsaken pull Fury. Then Thagrosh's feet triggers. Typhon puts damage into this cipher down here. The Seraph, which ended up around here after the Slipstream, advances and finishes off the light that Typhon had already damaged badly. The Blightbringer, which ends up around here, finishes off a heavy. And the Rake advances to kill another servitor. Like I said, I think if I had leapt to around here, he could have continued advancing into this backline and either started damaging lights or possibly just move over here and dedicate him to clearing this zone eventually. So here's the results of that. There were no points scored at the bottom of 2 on contesting everything, and this scenario, which I'm really glad is disappearing, it seems very dead to me. So I'm glad it'll be gone soon. So top of 3. Paul activates his caster first. He feats, and then his caster goes in and finishes off the Angelus. The Angelus, like I said, had taken a bunch of damage from a Watcher attack. Paul's Watcher attacks were so good this game. He dealt like more than 10 damage with every single one. So yeah, caster moves forward, murders the Angelus, and feats. So my counterattack next turn is going to be very blunted. So the Cypher down here rolls awfully on Typhon. So between his terrible rolls and excessive healing on Typhon, I end up only taking like 3 damage. Lights start laying into Blightbringer. I was surprised by the amount of output for all of the lights. He ended up bringing it down by more than half. So some serious damage there. So the other lights that are already being engaged by this Rake just end up swinging on it. They knock out its spirit and inflict grievous wounds. So at this point, my Rake is essentially dead weight. He's not going to do much of anything else for the rest of the turn. So that was his counterattack. It was not as effective as he wanted. However, with feet, he's going to be really tough. So he's going to have trouble, or I'm going to have trouble getting anything done on this turn. So once again, activate Thagrosh first, put up Manifest Destiny. I really should have advanced him. There wasn't really much in the way of threats here. So he probably could have moved up behind the Blightbringer to this area and been totally fine. And then been able to move in and kill lights on his own next turn, maybe go kill the objective, do something to contribute. I really shouldn't have held him as far back as I did. So I activate the Blightbringer next. I specifically don't turn it, which, due to melee ranges, means I end up forfeiting my attack in my left arc. But if I moved, I would have triggered Watcher, and I felt like I needed to not trigger Watcher because getting hit again could have potentially knocked out one of the Blightbringer's aspects that I had just healed with Thagrosh. which would have been bad. It would have totally ruined the activation. And honestly, it was low enough, and for how well Paul rolled Watcher damage rolls, he could have just killed the Blightbringer on the Watcher attack, which would have lost me the game handedly. So instead, I forfeit that one attack and instead just murder some heavies. He unfortunately rolls reasonably well, but with Paul's feet up, I don't kill anything. Puts a lot of damage on the Cypher, though. So then I activate Typhon next. So he is not... so this is the Cypher that I damaged quite a bit. So he can advance and be engaging both of these heavies. But unfortunately, that's going to trigger Watcher, and I am terrified of Watcher. So I put up excessive healing before I move, and I move over to that spot, and Watcher triggers, and once again does, like I said, a ton of damage, 15, I think, for this attack. Fortunately, with excessive healing, I rolled a 2, so I was able to heal both of my aspects and be on 4. But even if I had only rolled a 1 for excessive healing, I could have then forced for regeneration to heal whatever aspect was still out. It would have cost me an attack, but certainly would have been better than risking being standing there with broken aspects. So Typhon moves there. He does a good amount of damage to this heavy, finishing it off, and puts a little bit of damage on the other. Not a lot, but a bit. The Seraph is in range to 10 inches. In range to shoot Elish. So he scoots over into the forest, about there, and kills Elish. The Rake sitting up here with its poor broken spirit flails ineffectually, and does literally nothing. I believe my spray here also takes down the rest of his mechanics, which really helped because he had several things this turn that had only taken a few points of damage, so the mechanics were going to be able to heal quite a bit. So as you can see, that heavy is down. So, top of 4. Paul activates his caster, advances into melee, and does some damage to the Blightbringer. Fortunately, not enough. Unfortunately, the light that's right here... Oh, he's a medium. The light right here finishes off the Blightbringer pretty handedly. It was amusing that Paul ended up stuck because the Cypher essentially one-shot Typhon without spending any of its focus. So in order to get focus from the light, or to the light from the Cypher, he ends up needing to buy attacks into his corollary. So he buys an attack, boosts hit, boosts damage, just to get the focus over to the Galvanizer to kill the Blightbringer. It was certainly worth doing, because otherwise the Blightbringer was going to just murder his caster the next turn. But it was funny to watch. So he's killed Typhon, he has killed the Blightbringer, and the lights over here kill the Rake. So at this point, I'm in trouble. So, once again, thagrosh puts up Manifest Destiny. This time I do advance him a little bit, because I know he's going to have to do something at this point, or else I'm just going to lose. Naga advances a little bit, shoots his caster, but I forgot that this theme and his caster give shield guard to literally everything, so it just kills one of the servitors. Sorceress hops in, does a spray, which does pretty much no damage. Then the Seraph charges his caster. It was a free charge because it's close enough to the Sorceress. Unfortunately, Watcher once again triggers, and Paul rolls 1,000 and knocks out the Seraph Spirit, which realistically is functionally game. So I advanced to here. The Watcher attack was horrible, and that essentially ended the game for me, realistically. So for Paul's counterattack, everything dies. He has this Cypher sitting here. So the Cypher, I mean, with its Watcher move, it's already in melee range of the Seraph. So the Cypher finishes off the Seraph easily. The lights over here kill the Sorceress. Realistically, everything is dead, aside from thagrosh. So I forgot to take a photo of his next turn. But the two lights had been sitting here, and thagrosh decided it was finally time to do something, so he charged in, killed a couple lights, and that was pretty much it. And then the following turn, Cypher advances, killing thagrosh and winning the game for Paul. So I really enjoyed playing this game. It was just one of those classic meet in the middle and slug at each other until somebody dies games. Those are always fun to play. Watcher was a huge pain to try and work around, and realistically, I couldn't work around it. It wasn't helped by the fact that Paul spiked every Watcher damage roll he rolled, but that's why we play games with dice. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm glad that this scenario is going away because it's generally just dead. Admittedly, it does kind of encourage the smash at each other in the center playstyle, which are fun, but realistically, scenario was never an option unless I committed harder to one of these zones. And I just don't have the model count in this army to really do that. Like, it's possible I could have bumped the Seraph over here, shot down these guys, and started scoring here, potentially. Let's see, what turn is this? Yeah, so like this turn, if I had just moved the Seraph over, still slipstream Typhon forward. Let's see, launch, doesn't want to find it. So we certainly could have hopped literally to where Typhon is with the Seraph. Well, not there, but close to it. And then had 10-inch shots that should have been able to... Yeah, so if I had gotten to this position with Seraph, I would have been able to clear both of these out. And then since Typhon clears out these two, I could have scored a point there. Like I said, up here with the Rake, I could have done something similar, where I could have focused harder on killing the servitors by leaping out every time. But it also lost its spirit so quickly that that might not have ever really panned out. And I mean, neither of us were ever going to score the center zone. I don't actually have any units, and by the time it was safe for Typhon or for thagrosh to be up here, I don't think I was really in the game anymore. So yeah, that was our game of thagrosh versus Follow Lucant. It was an enjoyable one, and I hope you guys found it interesting. Have a good one.